For holding and grasping. As you can see, I'm holding the marker and writing. But 4 limbs of birds are modified for flight. Then 4 limbs of whale are modified as flippers for swimming. This one as wing for flight. Then in horse is modified for running. Then in toad is modified for swimming and also mainly for jumping and for landing. So this is what we call homologous structures. The only explanation to this is the idea of common ancestors. So why will this? Let us see evidence to support organic evolution. This might interest you to know there are wealth of evidence that proves that organic evolution is real. But there are still much questions that organic evolution, including Charles Darwin's theory, cannot answer. It's obvious. So like I said earlier, your job is to believe whatever you want to believe, but make sure there is peace in the society. Let your belief never affect your neighbor. But there is difference between fact and belief. Religion deals with belief and faith. Science deals with explanation. Okay? Now, evidence to support evolution, because it was this wealth of evidence that made Darwin's theory more popular. Charles Darwin provided wealth of evidence from fossil records. Fossil record is the number one thing that proves crowd, that tries to shake the idea of spatial creation. That fossil remains. So we are going to see evidence of organic evolution, or evidence to support organic evolution. What are those things that will make you rethink that we all once shared a common ancestor, that we are a bit related in the beginning, but at the time we diversified? One is, I will take it from evidence from comparative anatomy, evidence from comparative anatomy, then evidence from vestigial structures. Vestigial structures, some might include it in the comparative anatomy. Evidence from embryology. Then evidence from palaeontology. That is evidence from fossil remains. Palaeontology. Evidence from comparative physiology or biochemical similarities. Evidence from biochemical similarities. Then evidence, remember this paleontology is also the same thing as fossil remains or fossil records. Then we have evidence from study of cell, cytology. Evidence from geology, of course, geological evidence. That's from geological timetable, geology. Then there are many other evidence that might be discussed, but I want to handle the common ones. I start with evidence from comparative anatomy. To compare is just to relate, to see differences, and to see similarities. Comparative anatomy is actually the study of the similarities and differences existing between the structures of different organisms. When you calm down and take your mind in a neutral level and see some structures in some organisms, it will marvel you that you have to notice that these organisms are not far related, that there are something connecting them. Even though you see yourself as a higher animal, when you look at yourself very well, you see that there will be something connecting you and the monkey. I'm not saying you are a monkey, of course. Some may tell you it sounds crazy to tell me that I once was in a monkey level and I came up to this level. You don't have the ability to say no to all this, just like you don't have the ability to say no to your own religious belief. So, in the comparative anatomy, there is what we call homologous structures. That will help us. Homologs or homologous structures are structures built in the same anatomical plan, in the same pattern, but are modified to perform different functions in different organisms. What do I mean by this? Organisms that have the same building pattern, that's it, they have the same plan. Maybe they are drawn in the same way, they are constructed in the same way, but their functions are not the same in all organisms. But in all organisms, they are built in the same pattern. But in all organisms, their functions are not the same. Why will they be built in the same plan, but their function will differ? The idea of common ancestor. It shows that you and that organism that is using it for another thing once shared a common ancestor. So, a good example of homologous structures are actually the 4 limbs of the 5 classes of vertebrates. The 4 limbs of the 5 classes, we have more than 5 classes of vertebrates, but I'll take it on the low key. Just in a traditional classification, we have the Pisces, the amphibians, the reptiles, the aves, and the mammals. So when you come to these organisms, there are 4 limbs, especially the tetrapods, are built in a plan or in an anatomical plan called Pentadactyly Plant. The Pentadactyly Plant, yeah. So coming in pentadactyl, I'm discussing comparative anatomy. Pentadactyl limb. Pent is 5, digit is dactyl. So this pentadactyl limb means 5 digits limb. For example purposes, all the 5 classes or all the vertebrate classes have this pentadactyl limb plan except the Pisces. The Pisces have lost their own. Which of the following vertebrates have lost their pentadactyl limb? The answer is fish, or the fishes, or the Pisces. Understood? Apart from the Pisces, all other classes have their 4 limbs built in a plan known as pentadactyl limb. So what is a 5-digit limb plan? It's not just ordinary 5. It starts with one common bone. And that one common bone is called the humerus. Then, which will now divide to form 2 shorter bones in the lower part, commonly called the radius and ulna. Then the other short bones, known as the carpals, that's the wrist bones. Then after that, you can now find your digits, which is always 5 in number. So we take a look at this for humans. After the palm, each one will now have 3 and 3, 1, 2, 3. Then the last but not the least. So this is a typical pentadactyl limb plan. Then the same plan here. When you come to the wings, the 4 limbs of birds are their wings. You will still see the same plan. The question is, why will God build these things in this way and they are modified to perform different functions? To me, because he's still the same God. So if you come to the wings of bird, they still have this pentadactyl limb. The only thing is that their radius and ulna is no longer separate. They might occur in form of radio ulna. Then you come to the flipper of whale. The flipper of whale, the cetaceans, that's the aquatic mammals, of course. It will surprise you to see the same plan. This one is for you, human being, of course, you are convinced. But if you go to the flipper of whale, you will still see the same pattern inside it, even though it's not going to use it for the same thing you are using your own for. So the question is, why all these similarities in the 5 classes of vertebrates? The answer is simple, the idea of common ancestor. So I now tell you, I want to prove to you why the structures in the 5 classes of vertebrates are regarded as homologous. They are uniform anatomically on the inside, homologous. Comparative anatomy. Remember, anatomy is the study of structure, internal structure, basically. Because physiology also studies structure, but actually external structure. Morphology, not physiology. Morphology studies structures, but a kind of external shape. But anatomy deals with internal structure. So internally, this is what we obtain. Even when you go to hops, they also have the same thing. The apus, whatever, you have the first bones, 2 bones, short. They are modified to perform different functions.
Hi, my name is Cheryl.
And I'm Jennifer.
Guess what? There's a channel called Her Majesty Easy World Science.
And you know the best part? It makes science so easy. Wow.
It makes science easy, simplified, and very, very fun.
Guess what? Rocket science ain't rocket science anymore.
It's now ABC.
Like if you did science your entire life.
Another thing about Her Majesty Easy World Science channel is that he makes available laboratory equipment and reagents.
Guess the best part? If chemistry has been hard for you, he does tutorials.
And another thing is, when you order for these things, they are high quality and they are also cheap and affordable for anybody.
If you want to order, just look at the number below the screen.
And don't forget to subscribe and hit the little notification button down below.
Don't forget to share, of course, obviously there's love in sharing.
Thank you! See you there.
So, the comparative anatomy, as we have seen, in the 5 classes of vertebrates, let's see, their plan is in the pentadactyly limb, 5-digit limb. And remember, I told you that this 5 is not actually the major thing. Now, the major thing is that it starts with a common bone called the humerus, then the 2 bones called radius and ulna. Endeavor to watch my anatomy video here where I taught all this in human anatomy using the real human humerus and even the animated objects. Then here is the carpals, the short bone, then here phalanges. So if you come here, it's the same thing, humerus, radioulna, phalanges, the same pattern. So, but they are modified to perform different functions because of what? All these groups are not found in the same environment. So the further organisms live, the more they vary, especially in their function and actually maybe in their structure. Okay? 4 limbs of man is modified for holding and grasping. As you can see, I'm holding the marker and writing. But 4 limbs of birds are modified for flight. Then 4 limbs of whale are modified as flippers for swimming. This one as wing for flight. Then in hawks is modified for running. Then in toad is modified for swimming and also mainly for jumping and for landing. So this is what we call homologous structures. The only explanation to this is the idea of common ancestors. So why will these structures be built in the same plan and in the same pattern, but they perform different functions? It is the idea that we came from an ancestor that have these structures built like this. So as you diversify to occupy different environments, you now use your own for different functions. They are now modified to perform different functions with regards to your environment. But the structural build, the anatomical building still remain the same thing. So I think this is enough evidence to convince you that species can give rise to another species by little or bigger modifications. Okay? Evidence from vestigial structures. Evidence from vestigial structures. The word vestigial can be seen as rudimentary. Vestigial structures are structures that are reduced in form and they are useless, but they are still found in the body of organisms. They are useless structures that are reduced in form, that's appearance, they are reduced, and they play no role, but they are still found in you. So why are those structures still found in you when they play no role? Some will argue, why would God put structures that have no role in you and allow them to remain there, and allow them to remain in another organism where it is performing another function? They will tell you it doesn't make sense. But to me, it might be just that it's the God. He knows why he's there. Try to watch one of my videos where I say scientific and non-scientific statements. It will be funny and it will be nice. In one of the series I do, Let's Talk Science. Try to listen to that series, of course. Now, I say that vestigial structures are rudimentary structures or abandoned structures or useless structures. By definition, in a clear way, I say they are structures that are reduced in form and they play no role to that organism. Why are they still there? Because another structure that have taken over their function, but they still remain there. Now, examples of vestigial structures. You don't just name any structure and call it vestigial. You name a structure and call the organism where it is vestigial, because organism A may have a part as vestigial, but organism B will have that part is not vestigial. It is useful for that organism. Examples of vestigial structures are tailbone in man, tailbone in me, teaching you. Some doubt that humans don't have tail. We have tail. When you take a look at the X-ray of human, especially sideways, you see that tailbone, and tailbone of man is called coccyx. The coccyx is made up of 4 bones that are fused together. And our tailbone, that tailbone is still there, it's still in me, still in you. All humans have it, but it is playing no role. Why is it still there? It is a mark to show that we all evolved from an ancestor that once had a tail functional. But now, why is it reduced? We have hand now that have taken over that function. Our hand can grasp, hold. If insect flies out, we now scare it with our hand. Just like Lamarck's theory of use and disuse said. Maybe that's the reason why the structure become reduced in us. Why? We stopped using it and it become reduced. It's also an evidence supporting theory of use and disuse of Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. Then another example of vestigial structure is wings of ostrich. The wings of ostrich are entirely vestigial. Ostrich have wings, but the wings is playing neither of the roles that wings play to bird. Birds use their wings for flight, or rather they might have feathers attached to the wing which helps them to insulate their body and also beautify. But in ostrich, the wings are very much reduced. It's very, very reduced, but it's still there. Why is it still there? To show that an ostrich is a bird. Despite its large size, it can no longer fly, but that is just like a mark of identity for every member of that family, that you must have that wing. And that's why ostrich is having it. So, wings of ostrich is purely vestigial. Then appendix in man. Appendix in man plays no role. It only causes disease known as appendicitis, which can only be treated by appendicectomy, that is a surgical removal of it. So what it does to man is to cause disease to man. But this appendix is modified as curcum in herbivores, where it helps them to digest herbs. For us, we do no longer feed on herbs. We have started feeding on other forms of food. We become omnivorous instead of herbivorous. So it becomes reduced, but it's still there. What is it showing? To show us that we actually evolved from an ancestor that once have such structure. It is a mark of identity, and at this point, that is where recapitulation theory might come to play, though recapitulation is no longer holding very well. In other words, using, I think, Haeckel's statement, which says that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Ontogeny just means the developmental history of an organism, especially in the embryo, the stages you pass through in the embryonic stage. That's what we call ontogeny. Then, phylogeny is the evolutionary development of a species, not an organism. So they are trying to say that the stages an organism pass through during development, we will see this more when we go to embryology, of course, is reflecting the forms, different stages of evolution of that species to which that organism belongs to. But I don't think this is still all credited in all angles. There are aspects that will say that this is not true. Meaning, you pass through the stage your ancestors passed through while evolving during your development. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Meaning, a chronological replay is playing role here. Meaning that phylogeny is repeated during ontogeny. That's just by the way. So, vestigial structures, we still have other further examples. Okay, I gave you 3: the tailbone in man, the wings of ostrich, the appendix in man, and also the last wisdom teeth, or rather the last pair of molar in man, called wisdom teeth. Wisdom teeth in man may be seen as vestigial, but my argument against considering wisdom teeth as vestigial is that it's not reduced. Structurally, wisdom teeth is well developed, only that the function can be neglected. if you go to the dentist, that take care of the teeth, if they are copying impression of the teeth, they don't copy that. Why? Because it has no row. You can chew very well if the wisdom teeth is removed. There are 4 wisdom teeth in man, meaning the last set of molars. They are seen as vestigial in terms of function. But to me, in terms of structural development, I don't think they are vestigial because they are well developed structurally, but they play no role. Even if you are fixing artificial teeth, nobody copies that wisdom teeth because without it, you can still grind well. Okay, so other evidence will be discussed in another video. Please, thanks for being there. I love you so much. Much love from me to you. Expand this science community. I cannot do without you. Please don't go without sharing this video and ask your questions. Remember, like I said earlier, this particular video is not to affect your belief. It's to increase your knowledge. Remember, the history of life will ever be a mystery because you weren't there. Your own is a belief. Whatever you have to do, believe. The world is free. Believe is free, but don't affect your neighbor negatively. Please, be a love to the world. Remain majestic. Goodbye for now.
I love you. Thank you for watching.
You are Alpha and Omega.